Welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Today we're going to start with the question, have you ever considered the immense power of storytelling in transforming personal struggles into universal triumphs? Think about it. The books we cherish, the stories that linger in our hearts long after the last page is turned. What makes these narratives resonate with us so deeply? Storytelling isn't just about weaving words together. It's an art form that demands vulnerability, passion, and relentless determination. It's about translating personal experiences, the highs and the lows, into narratives that not only entertain, but also enlighten and inspire. Every creator embarks on a unique journey, one that's often marked by formidable challenges and remarkable victories. But what pushes them to keep going? What drives a person to turn their darkest hours into a beacon for others? In the world of creativity, sharing these journeys isn't just beneficial. Sometimes it's necessary. It's how ideas spread, how wisdom is passed on, and how a community of creatives thrives. By unveiling the behind the scenes of their creative processes, creators can help others navigate their own paths, avoid common pitfalls, and reach new heights of their own artistic endeavors. Well, today I am thrilled to introduce a remarkable guest, Tom Kranz, a seasoned author whose journey embodies resilience and the therapeutic power of writing. Tom, an experienced first responder in EMT, has faced the kind of intense, life-altering experiences most of us can only imagine. Through his writing, he has channeled these experiences into stories that not only entertain, but also offer hope and healing to others. Tom is joining us to share not only his craft and writing process, but also the profound personal journey that led him to become an author. His story speaks volumes of the idea that it's possible to find one's way out of great despair and darkness and emerge into light, happy, productive, and immensely creative. And I'm so glad he's here with us today. So, Tom, welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. And you picked the exact moment. First of all, I'm in my backyard here in beautiful New Jersey. And yes, there are parts of New Jersey that are beautiful, but you picked the exact moment that the recycling truck showed up in front of my house to empty my stuff. So if it gets too crazy for you, we can stop or I can mute, but maybe not. You tell me.
No, it's good. It's fine. There's always this background noise reduction feature that I am a big fan of. So we'll be all right.
All right, good.
Well, Tom, let's just start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what life was like before you started writing.
Well, I'm originally from Philadelphia. I live in New Jersey now. I never thought I would live in New Jersey. In fact, for Philadelphians, New Jersey is almost like another country. And New Jersey has been the butt of many jokes nationwide, especially on Saturday Night Live. A lot of them are absolutely warranted. But New Jersey has beautiful beaches, and not every state can say that. So for that reason alone, we're hanging here. I've lived here for about 30 years. I started life as a college student in Temple University. I majored in communications and journalism. I was really inspired in high school during a career day when they wheeled in a bunch of local people to a senior assembly to talk about all the career options you have out there in the wider world. And one of them was a TV anchorman from he was like one of the legendary anchormen in Philadelphia. And he talked about journalism and about reporting and about how to do that. You really need to write, and you need to write a lot, and you need to learn how to write. So that's kind of what steered me towards journalism. I liked writing in high school, and I figured if I become a journalist, I can write a lot and I can write every day. And that's pretty much the way it ended up. I started in radio news back when radio news was a big deal. And then I became a TV news writer. And over the years, I kind of grew into that job. I became an associate producer, an executive producer at my station in Philly. Then I moved to New York and became a senior producer where for CBS, I basically supervised a unit of reporters who went around the world covering stories and kind of watching over their scripts. I did a lot of writing there. And I did all that for about 30 plus years. That career came to an end in 2007. And then I started on a different kind of career journey, working in corporate communications. And it was when I left the news business that I decided I want to write creatively. I want to make stuff up. I don't want to write factually. I don't want to have to write fairly. I mean, that was part of being a news person, but I want to make up stories. And that's what I did. And since then, I've written 6 novels, and I'm working on my 7th right now.
That's amazing. So, was there a hard transition for you to go from this nonfiction world of writing to fiction, or did you just embrace it and became this storyteller that just could not stop?
Yeah, writing the news is a special skill. You have to take a story that's this big and make it this big,
Hmm.
right? For a TV viewing or a radio audience. And, that's an audience that they got to get it the first time because they're not going to open the book or flip back the pages of the newspaper. If you miss getting their attention and having them understand it the first time, they're going to change the channel. So it's a whole discipline to learn how to write for TV and to write journalistically for radio and television. So sitting down after that and writing more expansively and writing creatively was actually a challenge. The very first novel I wrote, I started writing it the way I would write a news script, and I would put it away and come back, a few days later and say, this is not going to be for a TV audience. I need to really scope these characters out more. I need to be more descriptive. I need to really bring the viewer in, right? It's not like a drive-by shooting where I'm going to hit them with a few facts and hope they get it. I really need to suck them in. So that's the long answer to your question, which is yes, it was a transition, something I got better at with each book that I wrote.
I bet you are a killer blurb writer. I bet writing the blurb is not a problem for you like it is the rest of us.
Well, killer, I don't know if I'm killer or not, but I'm certainly used to writing like, a one or two sentence kind of tease for the job I had. One of the jobs I had after I left broadcasting was public information officer for my town here. And that involved writing a lot of captions for photographs. And if you've ever done that, there's an art in that. You have to kind of describe in one sentence or less what the person's looking at, or at least kind of assist them. So yeah, I guess I kind of got good at that. I don't know if that's a skill that's marketable any place other than my little world, but all right, fine.
Listen, the blurb is the one I will write 120,000 words of this fantastic romance novel, and I will love it, and I will know my characters inside and out. And then my editor's like, "Where's the blurb?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
hard,
know.
right?
It
It's hard
is.
to, after you've written them. It takes me maybe a year, anywhere between 10 months and a year to write a book.
Hmm.
And then it's time to sit down and write a little capsulization for a query letter or even for Amazon. And it's like, okay, where do I start and where do I end to boil this sucker down into 3 sentences? It's hard.
It is hard. It is such a challenge. But
Yeah.
it also, I have found that I'm sure there's a formula to it. I just haven't discovered it. But I know for me, the farther separated I am from the work, the
Mm.
easier it becomes, which is so
Oh,
funny. Like when I'm so invested in it, I can't tell you. Don't ask me what my book's about. But give me a year and I'll be able to tell you.
yeah, that's funny. No, I kind of get that.
Yeah. So what do you write about in your books? Where did you fall in the genre and that kind of thing?
Well, in the beginning, when I left broadcasting in 2007, I wrote the first three novels I wrote are like a trilogy. They're about a guy who's a lot like me. They all kind of take place in the news world with news as a background, a newsroom in a background. But, I write from my own experience being a kind of a semi-dysfunctional, let's just say I've had a kind of disdain for authority figures my entire life. And that's reflected in my first book. Probably the first reason I got fired from that job in 2007. But between, kind of this sublimated anger that I had for a long time and the news business, that's kind of where the inspiration came from. But all the while, keeping in mind that we have to keep our characters human and we have to keep them relatable, or people will just not want to read. Right. So I can't make this character a total asshole the entire time. There can be asshole elements, but we have to be a human being and we have to be empathetic. And so that was a real challenge, and that got easier with each one of those three novels. I wrote about a married couple because I didn't think there was a whole lot of books out there and stories about marriages and married couples. So my hero is a guy named Bud Remick, and his wife's name is Maggie, and she puts up with a lot of his crap for a long time. And in the third book, it turns out they both had secrets that they've been hiding from each other for 20 years. So, keeping humanity and kind of the human element is a big part of those stories. The two science fiction books I wrote are the same. I've been a sci-fi fan my whole life since I was a kid. But as I write, I realize that it can't just be about ray guns and spaceships and special effects. It has to be about people. So both of my sci-fi books I tried really hard to draw really good character studies of each of my characters, my heroes and the villains, because I think at the end that's what keeps people reading, you know?
Hmm.
So that's kind of another long answer to your very simple question.
I'm all about long answers. It gives me more to think about as I'm just getting to know you and following the conversation. I am a character driven writer. Like all of my stories, they start with the characters. And if
Mm,
I get into somebody else's book and the characters are not realistic and relatable, if I
mm,
can't insert myself somewhere in that story,
right.
it loses me. I drop out pretty quickly. And so I'm the same way. Like I'm going to, and I have a background. My background is in psychology, and so people are my jam. And so writing
Mm.
characters, I love writing characters. It's sometimes I write them too healthy. I actually was told a couple of days ago, they were like, your characters are always like mentally and emotionally stable. And I thought, well, oops, because I'm a marriage and family counselor. Like that's what I
Ah,
was. That's where my background was.
oh,
And
that's
so
so funny.
I know. And so I was like, well, dang it. Now I've got to go back and I've got to make some adjustments and make my characters a little less normal, I
Well,
guess.
that's funny you say that because in each one of my books, there is a villain, a specifically heinous guy. Always a guy, right? I don't know why, but and I get that from I've seen a million interviews with actors, beloved actors who have a reputation for playing good guys, and then suddenly they play a bad guy, and they tell the interviewer how much fun it is to play a bad guy because
Mhm.
this is not the way I am. But so I kind of there's a little bit of Schadenfreude, if you will, in writing a bad guy. It's like how bad can I make this guy? And so I try to make him really bad because if, really heinous characters, I think help bring out the good in your good characters. And, frankly, it keeps people interested and it keeps people reading. But I just think that's funny that, you got to write, you're always writing good things about people. You got to stop that, Jen, right?
I
You got to stop it.
and it's so funny because in the series that I'm currently working on, there's one just female character who nobody likes her. Like every reader that has, early read or just gotten into the novel, they're like, man, I'm glad she's being dealt with. And I'm just like, oh, so like there's a scapegoat, I guess. But at the
That's
same
funny.
time, I'm like, it's just the one. Everybody else is perfectly healthy. It's just her. And she's
Oh,
not even the main character.
cool.
I
Yeah.
know. What do you do though? Okay, so when you published your first book, did you go a traditional route or did you go a self-publishing route?
Okay, so my first book I actually wrote in the 80s when I was still working at a TV station in Philadelphia. I was involved in covering a really horrific story in Philadelphia in 1985. You look like you might be too young to remember that, but it was a story in which the city tried to evict this radical group from a home in West Philadelphia. The group was called Move. They ended up burning down the whole neighborhood. They bombed this building. They killed all the people inside, including the kids. And our station won an award for its coverage of that story. So I wrote a nonfiction book about that. This was in the mid 80s. At that time, I actually found an agent who was excited about the work. She had it for a year. She schlepped it around to a dozen publishing houses. And, the reaction was always the same. Well, it's really well written, but it's a little too local. And by the time that book made the rounds, the event was 4 years old and there had been several other books written about it. So I really didn't have a chance. So it sat in my attic, literally a manuscript this thick printed on an Oki Data dot matrix printer, because this was the mid 80s. There was nothing. There was no internet. Wasn't shit, right?
Yeah.
I dusted it off and I digitized it, and then I self-published that, and every book since then I've self-published. My self-publishing venue of choice is Amazon because it's just easy. It doesn't really cost anything unless you pay for a proof copy of the book. Amazon gets its chunk when I sell a book, and frankly, I didn't do it to get rich or famous, and I'm neither. I did it because I enjoy the writing, and I've gotten enough positive interviews from people who are not friends and family to know that I'm probably on the right track and I'm doing something right. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I like it. Yeah, self-publishing. I thought that going traditional was the only option, and then I kept getting these rejections and rejections and rejections. And I had one agent on the line, and she was like, "Yeah, let's send a full." And so she took the full, and she came back like 3 months later, and she's like, "I just don't think this is for us." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," And so like all of these rejections on top of the waiting, and I thought, okay, I've got to figure out how to do this because I know that I have a good book. I know that it's a good story. I love my characters. And so I started figuring it out, self publishing. And now it's like, I don't think I want to go a different
Yeah.
direction. Like I love the control of it. I love the business side of it. Like I really like the process.
Yeah, totally. The whole query process, when you have to write a one page, very concise letter that you're now going to send to, I don't know, 30 agents, to try to sell your book. And invariably, 95% of those people never get back to you. And they say right up front, if you don't hear from us, we don't care. So you don't hear from most of them. And then the few you do hear from, this isn't from me. So that takes a course of months or even years. So I just said, look, I'm not going to sit around and wait for somebody to bless my work. I know that this is a story that's worth reading.
Yes.
The major challenge for people like us is the marketing.
Yeah.
Most of us don't have $10,000 to spend on advertising and marketing and getting experts and whatnot. So you do what you can. But as I said, for me, it's been fine. And, having venues like yours and mine is huge. And I think that I don't think I would go back to, the traditional way either, frankly.
Yeah, and it's changed so much just over the last few years. Like when I first started dabbling in this whole publishing scene, like it has changed so much that watching the traditional publishing houses, kind of have meltdowns over the
Hmm.
self-publishing industry and how it has kind of picked up and boomed. And now they're like, we're so inundated. And I'm like, are you though? Are you? Because here we are,
Yeah.
making a scene in the self-publishing world. And it's like all people can talk about right now.
Yeah. And, the downside is, of course, there's a double edged sword to everything. And self publishing is one of them. There are so many companies out there that want your money. They'll do, and they make all kinds of promises about everything they're going to do for you. When at the end of the day, all they really want to do is sell you copies of your own book.
Mhm.
You know, I don't need 100 copies of my book in my freaking living room. I need you to make them, to sell them for me. Right. So, people who are embarking on self publishing need to really kind of do their homework and, find a company that works for you. Control is a big deal. The minute you start feeling like these guys are trying to pushing me around and they're constantly upselling me stuff, that's always been a red flag for me. And that's kind of why I ended up in Amazon. It is so totally DIY. It's a little daunting for a first time person because there's a lot of places where you can screw up. But once you get it down, it's almost a no brainer.
Absolutely. No, I agree completely. Um, Ooh, that question just came and went right in one ear and right
That
out the other.
happens. You're not
It
even old.
does. Yeah, like I was getting really excited about this conversation. I was like, yeah, because I'm all about the self-publishing side of things. I'm all about the control. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say there are vanity presses out there. And when you see, if they are labeled Google, I mean, research, do your due diligence, because if
Yeah.
it is called a vanity press, literally you are paying them to put their name on your book. And
Yeah.
then it's like you're still in the same boat you were in before they put their name on your
Yep.
book.
So
So yeah,
true.
you have to be so careful. Are there other options? Absolutely. If you can't do this without someone holding your hand, look for a good hybrid press company. They're
Sure.
really good. I've got several in my back pocket.
Hmm.
Send an email, I'll let you know. But yeah, no, self-publishing, in my opinion, you can find other people, which leads me to my next question. Like building a community and sharing your journey with other authors and other creatives. Like what are your thoughts on forming a community like that in collaboration?
I find it helpful up to a point, but I've been to a number of book fairs in my area here. In fact, I'm going to one Memorial Day weekend. And I find that self published authors are very much about their work,
Yeah.
their their genre.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we don't have good conversations and we don't have conversations exactly like this about sharing experiences. But I find that those conversations and those communities are cool up to a point. So the answer to your question is yes, I do find them valuable. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be me doing my own thing.
Oh, for sure. I think I have two authors that it's really funny. I met them here on my show 2 seasons ago, and we just kind of became friends. But we've also kind of become this little small family of collaborators. Hey, will you read this for me? Hey, what's your ideas on? And last night, one of them was like, I want to do a giveaway. I have all these things that I need. I forgot I had. I want to do a giveaway. How do I do that? And so we're like constantly putting ideas in each other's heads and feeding off of one another and supporting one another.
Oh,
And
that's
I
very
don't
cool.
It is very cool, and it's not one of those things that I ever really thought, because like you said, it's my work and I'm kind of protective about it. I'm kind of, selfish in my journey in that
Yeah.
form or fashion. But having somebody or somebodies like that in your corner, it actually can make a pretty big world of difference. You just have to find the people that you can trust who
Yeah,
have
I get
this.
that. And,
Yeah,
as my wife will tell you, I'm not one of the most social people in the world. I really like this kind of interaction here. I'm more a one-on-one person, but I totally get, yeah. So when I go to these book fairs, I do kind of try to trade secrets with people. I've never gone collaboration yet, but for my next book, I probably will because I agree it's helpful.
it is helpful. And it's so funny because, like yesterday I had a scene from one of my books that's coming. It's down the road a little ways, but I had written it and I thought, is this gratuitously like sad? Did I do this for a shock factor? Like, is it something, am I going to lose readers over it? Because it's pretty big. It's pretty heavy. And so I sent it to the group and one of them wrote me back and said, I'm about to go into a meeting at work and I have been crying. And I was like, oh shoot, but it's stuff like that where you can actually give your work away for a
Sure.
moment and feel pretty safe that it's in the right hands. So,
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, great.
yeah, it is. It's pretty fantastic. But again, make sure they're people that you can trust because this was a relationship that started a year and a half ago, right?
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
immediately hand my stuff over and say, "Here, read this for me." It was like,
Sure, sure. Trust is a big thing, of course.
it is like, do you like the title of my book? Like that was as heavy as it got.
Mm, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you have any ideas in mind for your next project, or what's the next project that's coming up that you're most excited to talk about?
I just started writing a third science fiction book. My two sci-fi books very broadly have to do with they're character studies about actual people, but they take place kind of in the background of the Earth's declining climate. The whole idea that the climate between global warming and the fact that not enough of us really care, the Earth starts to crumble. It's kind of a little bit of dystopian themes, although I think my stories are more about the people and not about the Earth crumbling, although it's a background. I wrote two of those. In the second one, so many people are trying to escape the Earth's demise that they've moved to this gigantic domed city on the moon. And so now that was an interesting project because my technical advisors on that were a group of high school students in Philadelphia who are taught by my brother-in-law, who's an engineer. And in this engineering class of high school, these are all brainiac kids, and quite a few of them knew about space and gravity and the moon and radiation and rockets and all this stuff. They actually advised me on like what would life on the moon be like? Can you actually survive in 1/6 gravity? What do you think about the whole idea of building a 2.5 mile big dome? So that was fun. And now the project I'm working on now is a kind of a sequel to that, in which all my characters are now 20 years older and the Earth is even more screwed up than it was then. And I'm just kind of at the beginning of that. Unlike a lot of writers, I don't actually sit down and outline the whole book. I kind of start with an idea and I start to write. And I'm a big believer in writing first and analyzing later. Get stuff down and then walk away from it and come back and then either discard it or change it or keep on moving. That's the way I've written all my stories. I do it in a linear way, start from the beginning, and I work towards a logical end.
I'm the same way. There's no outline. Like I will have one big happy page full of word vomit as soon as the idea hits my head and
Yes,
it's there.
that
And then
works.
I go from there. But they're outlining. Don't ask me to do it. It will not happen. I
You,
cannot.
I listened to an interview with Stephen King once. I forget who he was talking with. I think he was being interviewed by a public TV station in Maine where he lives. Anyway, he said that the worst thing an author can do is keep a book of author notes. He said, stop writing crap down. Somebody asked him about, does he outline his chapters in advance? And he says, no. He says, writing a book is like this. It's like sitting at a campfire. You start by yourself, and then suddenly all these creatures and all these characters show up at the campfire because they want to share the light, they want to share the heat, and that's how he builds a story. It's like they kind of come, and then slowly but surely they either go away or he kills them off, one or the other. But he doesn't start with this master plan, and I am so about that. It just makes the writing so much more fun. I've gone on some writers groups where you got a guy this one guy posted that he just finished outlining all 52 chapters of his next book. And I said, you mean to tell me you spent all that time outlining chapters? Did you write any freaking thing yet? No. So that doesn't work for me. And I just think it's a lot more fun writing and starting and just seeing where the story takes you.
I agree. And it's just like being surprised. It's like, oh, I'm reading a book for the first time.
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
No, I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, so we are at the point of the show where we're going to flip the script if you're still interested, and you get
Sure.
to be the host of the show.
Okay. So, Jennifer, what do you do in your day job?
I have been very fortunate. I have cut all of my day job ties to podcasting and writing. I'm a homeschool mom, but my kid is independent study. So it's really, I'm a homeschool observer. Like I watch and make sure that she's doing her work. So I was a marriage and family counselor. I taught AP high school psychology. And a couple of years ago, I had my last client interview, and we kind of called it a day on that.
Sweet.
It was for the time. It was time. Like it was the season of change, and so I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do full time, and so this is what I do full time now.
Well, that's cool. And you're also an author. So, what kind of stuff have you written, and what kind of stuff do you write?
I started in 2021. I woke up from a dream, needed to know how it was going to end, and so I started writing. And the next thing you know, I had enough material that would have been multiple chapters, and I kind of said, "Hey, honey, I think I'm going to write a book." And he was like, "Oh, that's so sweet, great." And I was like, "Okay." And now my fourth book comes out in October, and so I'm
Good
pretty
for you.
excited. Yeah, I like to write romance. I have a romantic suspense series, and I'm working on a contemporary new adult romance series right now.
So, you're living your creative dream. Look at you.
I am, and it was an accident. Like,
That's so
I know
cool.
it's really not, but it was. It was just I woke up one day and said, "This is what I want to do."
Good for you. And you're able to do it. Well, that's fantastic. So, you have kids?
I have one. I have a
Yeah.
14-year-old, and she just finished her first year of high school, which I'm not old enough clearly to have a kid that old. I don't know how that happened, but
Oh, wait, 14-year-old girl. So that means she knows everything and you know nothing.
that is correct.
That's what I thought. All right. Okay. I've had
Now,
boys, but my wife is a girl and she
you
tells
know,
me what I need to know about that age.
and you know what? I'm actually really blessed in that world because she is not like I was at 14.
Oh,
And
really?
so we are opposites in so many ways and in the best ways because we're friends. It's
That's
not,
nice.
yeah. And I don't know, she's been my ride or die 24/7 since she was born, right? We've homeschooled. I've been a work at home or work from home mom kind of thing. And so it's been nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. And my last question for this portion is what venue or platform do you use to self-publish?
I use Amazon. And a lot of people, they have this chip on their shoulder about Amazon. They think
Yeah.
Amazon because they are so large. I get that. I do. But
Mhm.
oh my goodness, if you are self-published, your options are so limited.
Yeah.
And so Amazon, I'm on Kindle Unlimited. A lot of people don't think that's a good place. I love it. That's where I
Totally.
do most of my reading.
Yeah.
I love Kindle Unlimited. And then I do use Ingram Spark to print my books and to make them available to retailers if they want them, or to also have them on my shelf. But again, like I order them, they sit there for a minute, and maybe next year I'll have cleared my shelves.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Amazon's made it so easy with that little app that you download to your computer,
Yes,
because who doesn't hate formatting pages,
I
right?
know.
It's like
I
the
know.
worst. And so it does it for you. And anyway, all right, this concludes the opposite part of this interview, Ms.
Well, thanks so
Jennifer.
much. That was fun. That was good. All right, so let us know, how can listeners connect with you and your work? Obviously Amazon, but tell us if there's other places they can also reach you.
Well, all of my books are on Amazon under Tom Kranz. Now, I caution that there is another Tom Kranz out there who spells his name exactly the way I do, Kranz. There's no T in that name. That author, I don't believe he's active anymore because the books I've seen, they're kind of like travel oriented. So if you see a book that's kind of like a travel-y book with a very plain cover, that ain't me. My covers I do my own covers because I have some graphic design chops. And I have 7 books out there right now, and 6 of them are available as audiobooks as well. So the work is available on Amazon, audible.com. I have a website, tkbooksllc.com, which you can't actually buy them on the website, but they'll take you to the links. And then I have a podcast that I do that maybe you'll be a guest on, who knows, because you're a creative young lady. And I call it Type, Tune, tint, and that stands for people who write, people who do music, and people who are artists. And it's all about people who have like day jobs, regular lives. They work hard. Maybe they're in denial, but they have creativity that in some way worked its way up through all that crap. And now they're like semi-successful writers, musicians, artists. One of them is she was an anchor woman in Boston for 20 years, and in her early 60s, she started sketching in a sketchbook, and now she does acrylic paints that sell for $3,000-$4,000 and above. And it was all about her, as she likes to say, I gave myself permission to create. And that's such a universal among people who find their art later in life. I gave myself, you don't need permission to write. Just sit down and write, for God's sake. So that's kind of where I am. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll put all of your links in the show notes so people can find you with the click of a link. They can go find your books on Amazon
I
and just
appreciate
get to
that.
know you. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I have one final question. It's the big question. No
Oh,
pressure, but it's going to be earth shattering for somebody. So are you ready?
sure.
What is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
Um, that's a great question. I guess that from my days as I've been a sober person for almost 23 years now, and I spent some years in AA meetings, and I always go back to the whole idea that you don't control very much that goes on around you. When you think about how much you actually control, all you really control is what you do, what comes out of your mouth, and what you think. You can't control other people. You can't control Donald Trump. You can't control Joe Biden. You can't control most anything. So work with what you can control with, be a good person, work hard at what you know, prioritize family. And basically, if you do those things, you're going to be golden.
I think that is fantastic advice, and what a great way to wrap up our conversation. Tom, thank you so much for being here and hanging out. This was excellent. I loved how upbeat and fast paced it was, and I
Oh,
think,
my pleasure.
yeah, and I think listeners are really going to appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll do Turnabout sometime soon.
Yes, please.
All right.